name is Samantha, and I did my capstone topic on finding out whether or not pharmacy is the right career for me to pursue. The product I created is an educational video that can be used to help other prospective pharmacists decide whether or not their career choice is right for them as well. I find the act of deciding your career path after high school is really scary, since it is something that requires some form of commitment. That is why for my capstone I decided to spend all my focus towards researching information on one specific career only to either help convince me or others to look into pharmacy or cross pharmacy off my list of post-secondary study options. After completing my research, I sorted the information I gathered based on how useful it was, focusing on whether or not the information is both useful for myself and others. For my video, I summarized the facts deemed to be the most important to know before pursuing pharmacy. Had I included everything I gathered from my research, my video would have been far too long. So unfortunately, I did have to cut out a lot of information. However, that turned out to be okay, because that left out information would have been more beneficial for myself than for others. I gathered all my information from online sources such as articles and university websites. I also refer to information I retained from my mentor, who was a pharmacist who's been working for more than 40 years and went through 6 years of post-secondary education for becoming a pharmacist. I made my video in the style of a cartoon-like educational video. I was inspired by this YouTube channel called Amoeba Sisters, two girls who use animations to educate audiences on biology. In my opinion, I find educational videos like these retain my focus the best, and the imagery helps me memorize the facts a lot better. That is why I wanted to create a video in this style to educate audiences on pharmacists. I'm not much of an artist, nor did I know how to animate before making this video, so of course it doesn't look as clean compared to most cartoon-style educational videos. However, I think the product is close enough to what I was envisioning. Please remember, the intent of this video is to focus more on the information I'm explaining, not the visual, since I spent most of my energy on this capstone on pharmacy research. Take a look. A pharmacist's job from an outsider's point of view looks rather simple. For a patient's perspective, what they see is a pharmacist taking their piece of paper with their written prescription, type the information from the piece of paper into a computer, then later handing their patient their medication, approximately 15 minutes later. Why does it take this long? All the pharmacists have to do is smack a label onto a vial of pills and then hand it to the patient, right? There's actually a lot more that happens behind the counter at a pharmacy than the general public sees. The pharmacist isn't a regular worker wearing a white coat. He or she is in fact a very intelligent and persistent human being that had to go through years of hard schooling to get to the position they are at today, to provide you with the medication you need. This video will be explaining everything you should know before pursuing becoming a pharmacist, in about 5 minutes. From what exactly a pharmacist is and what they do, to the education required, as well as some extra information at the end, showcasing a realistic view of what being a pharmacist is like. To start off, a pharmacist is a healthcare worker whose job is to decipher, fill, and log prescriptions written by doctors received from patients. They overlook a patient's prescription record to make sure whatever medication the doctor prescribed has the correct dose for the age and weight, and does not conflict with what the patient is currently taking or taken in the past. Lastly, the pharmacist will counsel the patient on how to take the medication, and other general health topics. So the reason your medication is taking 15 minutes or longer to be dispensed is because of all these steps your medication has to go through before becoming a label stuck onto a vial. Moving on, it's time to look at what kind of education is required for someone to become a pharmacist. A general overview on the amount of schooling required is 2 years of studying under general sciences, and later 4 years of pharmacy school. Together, this means it should take a student 6 years to become a pharmacist. However, realistically, nowadays it takes at least 7 to 8 years. The reason for this is because of the amount of complex material prospective pharmacists have to learn, mostly in the third year of pharmacy school, the most challenging year. To give a sneak peek on what you would learn in the third year is where you will look at the specific classings for each drug, as well as how to organize them. The prerequisites required to get into pharmacy school differ depending on the university you go to. For the sake of convenience, I'll be focusing on the prereqs the University of British Columbia require, since personally I plan to go to that university. If you plan on going to the University of Toronto, these prerequisites will apply as well. Before getting admitted to pharmacy school, you'll need 2 semesters of first-year biology, chemistry, calculus, and social sciences, 1 semester of first-year English, writing along with 1 year of English at any level, 1 semester of second-year cell biology, organic chemistry, microbiology, and lastly, introductory statistics. After you graduate, as a working pharmacist, you will be required to do 15 hours of continued education every year to freshen up your pharmacology knowledge and keep things up to date. Now let's look into the career details. To get an official license, prospective pharmacists in Canada must pass 2 exams, the Pharmaceutical Examination Board of Canada, which tests for pharmacy skills and knowledge, and the Provincial Jurisprudence Exam. This exam differs between provinces. A pharmacist's annual salary and wage depends mostly on what company they plan to work under. For example, Shoppers Drug Mart pharmacists have a wage of $37.60 to $51.76 per hour, and an annual salary of $54,000 to $75,000. On average, pharmacists would work at least 28 hours a week, 8 hours per shift. Before you plan on pursuing pharmacy, it is really important that you're aware of the workplace hazards pharmacies have to offer. As a pharmacist, you'll constantly be exposed to patients with all kinds of health. Something most people don't realize is pharmacists are first-line workers during immunizations and pandemics. During pandemics, it's their job to provide medications to everyone, including the ill. Next are chemical hazards. As a pharmacist, you'll be working with cytotoxic drugs. Cytotoxic drugs can affect a person's health if constantly exposed to it. For example, cytotoxic drugs can even cause cancer. A huge hazard that is very common in most pharmacies are robberies. Since pharmacies tend to carry very expensive street drugs, they are prime targets for robberies to occur. Retail pharmacies can also contain medical devices that too are very expensive, thus prime locations for robberies to occur. Lastly, a workplace hazard that represents the reality of working in pharmacy is disrespect. Even though pharmacists are frontline health workers, they receive little respect from the public. Pharmacists carry all the medication records for each patient, so they can provide the best health service to patients as they possibly can. Most customers tend to see pharmacists merely as pill counters, even though their jobs hold much more responsibility. Before you plan on pursuing pharmacy, it is important to be aware that once you become a pharmacist, you'll be dealing with many customers who view you simply as a distributor and not a health worker. Let's review and summarize the most important notes taken from this video. It is the pharmacist's job to ensure the quality and safety of every medication they dispense to the public, ensure the medication is suitable for each patient's conditions, ensure the correct medication is distributed to the patient, and provide counseling for patients on how to take their medication. Prospective pharmacists go through a minimum of 6 years of post-secondary education. They get paid a wage between $37 to $51 per hour and work at least 28 hours per week, 8 hours or more per shift. As a pharmacist, you'll be exposed to the public and put at a higher risk of getting sick. Lastly, the most important thing to remember is what makes a successful pharmacist is not the work ethic, but the compassion. Becoming a pharmacist requires a lot of patience and work. You cannot become a pharmacist unless you have the passion to care for all sorts of patients and willing to risk yourself to provide the best care for the public. Making this video was probably the most challenging part of this capstone project for me, because like I said, I spent most of my time researching information on pharmacists, not on animations and not on creating videos. I also haven't drawn in a very long time before making this, so I didn't expect myself to struggle so much with creating simple doodles, and it takes much longer to finish them than I remembered. The video didn't turn out exactly how I expected it, but I am still satisfied with the product. I was able to create some of my visions of what it would look like, but slightly more simplified. For making it, I learned how long it takes to create those style of videos, especially if you do not have the proper programs to use. I did not feel like purchasing an animating program just for this project, so I decided to use Flipperclip, a very basic and beginner animation app. Since Flipperclip was such a simple app, it of course lacked many features that allowed me to create videos smoothly and easily. For my drawings, I alternate between using Flipperclip and another basic drawing app called Autodesk. Autodesk makes drawing a lot easier for me, but unfortunately I could not create animations on that app, so I had to alternate between the two apps. There were many moments where I completely lost creativity and could not envision what I wanted a scene to look like. I learned how much creativity it took to create the drawings for these educational videos. I did not have as many new scenes in my video, and I had to reuse a few because 1, I could not think of another way to draw those scenes, and 2, being I didn't have the time to create a whole new scene. As for combining all my clips together, I decided to use iMovie, an app from the App Store, which I wasn't fond of using, but it did get my job done. Originally, I planned to use a computer program called Sony Vegas Pro to edit my videos, but then I realized it is much more convenient if I did all my editing work on my iPad, rather than creating and then exporting onto my laptop. However, I did record all my audio onto my computer first and then export it onto my iPad. Reason being, I wanted to use a proper mic when recording to avoid too much background noise. Some interesting things I learned from this project was how challenging it is to become a pharmacist, especially now. I never realized how complex the material prospective pharmacists have to learn is, and as time goes on, more material is being added, new drugs, new procedures, etc. So the pharmacy curriculum is getting more and more difficult. My mentor gave me a brief summary of what pharmacists learn in each of the 4 years in pharmacy school, based on what they did 40 years ago, which I did not include in my video since it would be too long. I was shocked when my mentor told me the success rate for graduating pharmacists is very low due to the complex material and strict practices. That is why it usually takes about 7 to 8 years to become a pharmacist. I was also surprised when my mentor talked about the amount of disrespect they receive as a pharmacist. I was surprised at the fact that there are so many incidents where pharmacists are treated as if they are distributors who work in retail and not as health workers. I wish there was more talk out there explaining the importance pharmacists hold. Because from what I learned, pharmacists are very much needed in this world. With that said, personally, I don't think being a pharmacist is the right career for me to pursue. I have a passion for helping others, especially with their health, but it is not strong enough passion to lead me through the amount of studying pharmacists have to do. I don't want to go through that many years of schooling after high school, and especially if it's mostly focused on sciences. In grade 10, when I thought I was going to study to become a pharmacist after high school, that was before I took sciences and thought I had a passion for sciences. Now for grade 12, I realized I don't enjoy studying sciences as much as I thought. I'd rather look into other subjects. The curriculum for pharmacists involve a lot of biology and chemistry, which I do like biology, but not as much chemistry. The prerequisites pharmacy school requires calculus as well, which is a subject that is definitely not one of my strengths. Knowing the GPA pharmacy school requires, the first 2 years of pharmacy school would be very stressful for me considering the subjects I'll be taking then that I currently already struggle with. Now, it's not just the education pharmacists require that is convincing me not to become one, but also the career expectations. Pharmacists hold a lot of responsibility. They're constantly on their feet working for hours, moving nonstop. Even though there are technicians present, pharmacists do most of the work, so they're the ones who are running the whole pharmacy. The position has the potential to hold a lot of constant stress, thus I don't find as much interest in pursuing the career anymore. In the end, I was able to answer my initial topic question. Is being a pharmacist the right career for me to pursue after high school? The answer is no. Thank you for listening to my capstone.